What's going on, fellow content creators? Welcome to the Creator Factor podcast, a podcast about helping the creator build their brand and business online. And I am your host that loves you the most, Ozeal. And I want to welcome you to a solo episode. We're going to do something a little different. If you are catching this on YouTube, make sure you check out my background. I'm in a different environment today, so I'm switching it up a little bit. Hopefully, it sounds good on your end for all my audio folks, my people out there listening to the podcast. Thank you so much for checking it out. All right, so the question of the day is: podcasting worth the investment in 2024? It's a question that I get asked often. I have people now coming to me from the past few years who have launched a podcast, they stopped the podcast and they're trying to get back in the game, or content creators that are trying to step into the podcasting space for the very first time, asking this question: is it worth the investment? Like talk to me, Ozeal. Is it worth the investment? And before I give you my answer, because a lot has changed, let me hit you with a few stats real quick. Some interesting stats here that you'll appreciate. There are over 464 million podcast listeners worldwide, and it's projected to reach 504.9 million by 2024, by the end of this year. And as of 2023, last year, it became a $23 billion industry, and this growth is projected to increase over 100 billion before 2030. So mucho dinero coming into the podcasting space. So when people talk about monetizing, that's a whole different topic. But when we talk about like the monetization of this platform, there's mucho dinero being poured into the space, a lot of ad revenue and a lot of brand sponsorship deals, and people are just gravitating towards podcasting for many reasons, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But let me first talk a little bit about I don't think I've talked about this in this podcast, a little bit about my background in the space. So I've been in the podcasting space since 2014, and I've been in this medium. So I've seen this medium evolve from audio only, mix minus for my early OG podcasters, you know what I'm talking about, to understanding and knowing what an RSS feed was, the importance of having your RSS feed. Libsyn was an OG back then. Shout out to Libsyn. That was my first hosting service, which they're still around, and a reputable hosting service. And, I got into the space learning a lot of the tech part, learning a lot about what it takes to be a good host. And it was an interview-based show, and learning a lot about that as well. So it was learning on the job, and now fast forward to 2024. And by the way, in between that, after I transitioned and took a pause on the podcast, I was helping others start a podcast. I was working with a lot of B2B companies, and mostly were like personal brands, indie creators that were trying to get into the space. So I was teaching them, coaching them how to launch their podcast, and also teaching workshops around town. So I've been around the block. I've been around the block here in Houston, where I'm located. They call me the Houston's Podfather, because I was in it back in the day when really there wasn't much going on here in the city. In which in 2018 I decided to launch my first community, Pod Houston. Shout out to Pod Houston, and it was my efforts in bringing like-minded podcasters together to collaborate, to support each other, and continue learning about the space. Fast forward to 2024, and it's grown. It's crazy just to see it evolve. And I feel like every year it's growing quickly. And seeing YouTube play a major role in the podcasting space has been a game changer. Now we're seeing podcast listener growth in Latin America, and I believe it's 25% a podcast listenership in Mexico, and it's just blowing up everywhere. Another stat here: 59% of people listen to podcasts while doing something else at the same time. It's a very passive consuming. I was going to say passive consumption, but it is passive consumption uh, medium, and a lot of people are 59% are listening. They're cleaning the house, walking the dog, they're working out, and now they're plugged into the podcast. So we're seeing more and more of that as the years go by. And another really cool stat: 66% of podcast listeners in the U.S. are aged 12 through 34. So what we're seeing now is the data showing that the listeners are younger now, and we're seeing a lot of the youth getting into space, not only launching podcasts but also consuming podcasts as listeners. So I thought that was a really interesting take at that as well. And then this is something that it's been really interesting to see in the B2B space as a marketing tool. And if you're a business owner or a solopreneur or a service provider, and if you haven't added or considered adding podcasting as a marketing strategy, not to sell, but simply to cultivate your audience, to nurture and build your brand online. I think this is a great opportunity. There's a stat that shows that over 50% of marketers are already using podcasts to reach their target audience. And it's getting competitive in that space now, where I'm seeing a lot more organizations and companies and different business owners getting into the space, which I think it's really cool. I mean, we never saw that before. And now we're seeing it now more than ever to people getting into the podcasting space for the first time and using it as a marketing tool. So, I also want to talk about some of the evolution that I've noticed lately. Not along, definitely video, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but the tools and resources. Now we're seeing a lot of AI tools that are really emerging and making the workflow process a lot more efficient, easier to, I want to say simple. Definitely just it gives you more leverage as it's a podcast creator to multicast it and create different digital products or digital assets, excuse me, and be able to promote yourself on social media. And one of the things that I'm seeing is the AI community, the AI tools that are coming out. Excuse me, I'm using Opus Pro. There's castmagic.io, and I'll make sure I link this up. And what I plan on doing is in the future, maybe doing dedicated single episodes to some of the AI tools that I've been using and some of the ones that I recommend to my clients. And in the beginning, I was a bit hesitant on using them, but of course, we all know about ChatGPT, and I'm going to say this. I say this with the caveat: I love AI, but I'm also seeing a lot of podcasters get lazy with it. I'm going to call you out and just kind of create, go to ChatGPT and copy and paste, and just listen. We need some creativity. We need some personality. So we need that. So we can't lose that as podcasters. So if you get into the space, just know that AI tools are there to support you, to make your life uh, more efficient, more effective in your marketing efforts, but not to get lazy. All right. So I always say that. And I said that in interviews before, because I'm so passionate about not losing our creativity, our individuality, originality of who we are, and being authentic to the game. So want to make a note of that. So we're definitely seeing the AI tools play a major role. Again, you clicked on this because you're thinking, is it worth investing in 2024? And some of the things that I get a lot, the hurdles that a lot of people get caught up on, the tech side, which, you don't have to be a techie to get started with a podcast. If you want to do it yourself, there's a lot of simple tools to get you started. And again, if you want more information, drop me an email. I'll make sure I put my email in the show notes, or you can comment down below if you're watching us on YouTube. When it comes to podcasting tools, I mean, there's equipment, excuse me. It's just no excuse. I mean, there's ways to do it. You can literally have a podcast studio set up for $150, maybe even less than that if you can get away with it. You can buy some stuff used, audio interface, cables, headphones, not much. So the low cost barrier to get in is just not. It's efficient, for anybody who wants to get in the game. Now, when you add video, it definitely adds a little bit more of expense, but to get into podcasting, it doesn't have to break the bank to get started. I do feel like podcasting. I love the video component, but I still feel like listening to somebody like you're listening to me now. Listening to this voice is it's nurturing the connection. It's building the personal connection, right? And I think that's something that we don't see and in other platforms. There was a study not too long ago, and I wish I had the link. I'm gonna see if I can find it. But they looked at three different mediums. They looked at audio, video, and the written format, and they did a survey and they asked consumers which one did you least feel like you trusted, the most least trusted platform out of all three. And the last one, I think the most least trusted was the written format, and the most trusted was audio, surprisingly, and which really not a surprise because there's something about being in somebody's earbuds and listening to somebody that you can really catch the vibe and know where the soul where this is coming from. You know what I mean? Like it gives you a whole different authentic approach, and I think that's the reason why there's a deep connection when it comes to audio only podcast. And the other benefit that I'm seeing now is like the niches. There's definitely a great opportunity for different niches. As crazy as it may sound, don't ever feel like my niche, there's nobody's going to listen to this. I am seeing, being in this space, I'm seeing the most, you know, f- craziest off the wall niches that you wouldn't think that would have a podcast and be very successful at it. Um, there's beekeepers, there's other crazy, raising rabbits podcast. There's all these crazy niches that I'm seeing emerge, and I do feel like if you are in a niche, I think this is still a great opportunity for you to be able to educate or entertain or do both in a podcasting space. So I think that's pretty dope. So if you're the more niche you are, I think the more success you'll have in 2024. I would really encourage you to start a podcast. And if it's a very general platform, I challenge you to dial the niche in even more. I think the more niche you are, I think the greater chance you have of connecting with your audience. Um, the other benefit that I really like is I just like the using the podcast as a distribution channel, whether it's audio or it's on a YouTube, but using it to create multiple digital assets. I think there's the long form content that could break off into multiple pieces of short form content. As you may or may not know, you probably seen it already on your feeds, but you were seeing a lot more short form content emerge. We're seeing that happening a lot more, and I think podcasting can definitely now more than ever, especially with these AI tools, can provide your listeners and potential audience to multiple touch points regarding your brand, and I'm seeing that as well. So I think that's pretty exciting to see now in 2024. Some of the challenges that I'm seeing now, or I'm hearing about now, even with some of my clients, is just the saturation, right? It's oversaturated. It's just way too many podcasters, and I believe last time I checked the stat, there's like about 3.5 to 5 million podcasts. Now you'll hear that on surface, but here's the T. Here's the truth. The truth is that, and this is actually according to Amplify and Pod News, is that 44% of the podcasts have less than 3 episodes. Okay. 44% of the podcasts out there have less than 3 episodes. Only 720,000 podcasts have more than 10 episodes. Okay. So we're probably, if I'm need to make a rough estimation, we're probably maybe close to 1 million active podcasts. So when you hear this stat, 3.5 and 5 million, it's not that. It's definitely not that much when we talked about real active, consistent podcasts that are producing, one piece of content weekly. I think the numbers go way, way down. And again, according to Amplify and Bot News, 44% of podcasts have less than 3 episodes. So this is not an oversaturated market. I think what's happening is that a lot of people want to start podcasts, and you're seeing people start, but nobody's really sticking with it. I think that they're just seeing like they're not seeing the ROI, um, and they're not seeing like it's worth it. And if that mentality never goes anywhere with anything, right? Whether you're building a business or a podcast or a YouTube channel, we know how that mindset of like not getting the subs, not getting the download numbers, not getting the conversions right out the gate, that's never a winning game, right? That's not the winning mindset. That's not how we roll here. So the ROI is has been a challenge to measure. But podcasting is without a doubt a 10x trust builder. It's one of the most effective brand building mediums out there. And this will position you as a thought leader. This will solve your obscurity problem. It's important for people, for your brand to be top of mind, and incorporating a podcast strategy, incorporating podcasts in your marketing strategy and building your brand is definitely going to put you in a position where most people are afraid of. Why? Because they don't want to invest. They don't want to do the production. They don't want to do the research, or they simply feel like the ROI is not going to be able to convert. But we all know, like in business, it's the ones that really the brands too, that are really invest in the small things that are going to ultimately substantially be for the greater good, right? For the betterment of the business and for the long term, right? So those are the ones that I feel. So it's definitely not it's not a direct revenue stream of income. And that's why sometimes a lot of you little gurus out there, and you probably heard it too as well, when they promise they're going to monetize you in 30 or 60 days, I call bullshit. Okay. That's just not the way it rolls. The ones that have who can monetize are the ones that have businesses first in an audience, and then they can kind of make the podcast and position it to where they can kind of get conversions, right? And it could be a lead gen, but that's not the way I like to teach podcasting. I do feel like this is a way for us to build brand, build trust, be visible, be top of mind, and establish yourself as a thought leader in this space, and also like a very generous thought leader. Because if you have an interview-based show, now you're bringing in other people, and you're having them to talk about what your audience would be interested in. So that's the way I look at podcasting. And so there's a lot going on. As far as like what somebody would ask me, what are kind of the strategies for success in the podcast? I do feel like having a good branded niche is important in dialing in that messaging. Messaging is marketing. So the more niche you can be now in 2024, I think the more successful you'll become. I don't think now it's not enough to just launch a podcast for just real estate people or to inspire entrepreneurs. That ship has sailed. I think we got to get very nuanced. We got to really dial in who it is. And I hate to say this, but the weirder it gets, the better it's going to be for your podcast. And I feel like that's the way it is. And even if you have like a B2B podcast, it's just making it interesting, making it engaging, and figuring out where is your angle, what is your POV, what's your, point of view. I think it's important. Establishing and planting that flag is going to make your podcast stand out. The other thing that I'm seeing be successful for a lot of podcasters, the ones that really are encouraging viewers. So I love the idea of incorporating live streaming as a way to offset the podcast, to kind of humanize your personal and here we go. I do feel like live streaming is the ultimate community connector. I think it's a great way for you to build community. And I do feel like that is a strategy that I feel like now in 2024 can be incorporated with the podcast to really grow it. Um, that's something that I'm very big on as well. And then the other, strategy that I've been thinking a lot about is just, collaboration. I think, creators, podcast creators in general, it's a very collaborative, supportive community. And I don't think we're doing enough to really do outreach to connect with other creators. So if you are a podcaster, I highly recommend and suggest that you reach out to other podcast collaborators or podcasters in your space to collaborate on content, doing a promo swap, even a feed drop where we exchange feeds, episodes, and just kind of really building relationships with other podcasters. You'll be surprised um, what that can do for your podcast growth. So that's something that I'm really, really big on as well. So I say all this in conclusion, in that, is podcasting worth the investment? 1000%. 1000%. I do believe that podcasting is definitely worth the investment. I think it's bigger than ever. I think it's just we got to get a little bit more creative and more nuanced with what we're doing and who we're trying to create the content for. But as from a personal brand content creator standpoint, I'm seeing a lot of big YouTubers now getting into the podcasting space is because they do love the conversations and it's making for great content. So it's a great way to really establish yourself in 2024 online. So highly recommend it. If you are interested in one-on-one coaching, podcast coaching, reach out to me. I'll make sure that I link it up down below. We can book a discovery call to see if this is a good fit and if you're ready to start a podcast or just to answer any questions. If you just want to get on a call and just talk and ask me questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. So hit me up, let me know. But this is a great opportunity, y'all. And podcasting isn't going anywhere. And I think with video podcasting, we're going to see it continue to grow. And I do feel like there is room for a video podcast to really make breakthroughs and really establish yourself online and to amplify your personal brand even more. So I'm excited about the space and I hope you are too. And that's why I started Creator Factor, is because I really wanted to inspire other creators to consider podcasting as an opportunity to build their own brand. But also, I'm a believer. Like I'm the testament of somebody who started back in 2014 and have seen other brands do it, have done it with my clients, and then now doing it with my own. I'm in the trenches again, building my own brand in the creator space. So definitely consider podcasting as a great opportunity to do something different, be generous, and just create something special for your audience. So yeah, subscribe if you're listening to this on audio. Oh, by the way, a huge favor, definitely go and leave a rating and review on Apple or Spotify. I would greatly appreciate it. It does, they say that it doesn't really help the podcast. I like the idea that people are actually leaving ratings and reviews because it makes me feel like it's resonating with somebody. I know it's a little tedious or whatnot, but I promise it takes about a minute, and I'll make sure I give you a shout out on the next show. So thank you so much for checking out the podcast, Creator Factor, and I will catch you next week with a brand new episode. Till next time, peace and one love.